I'm here with Reinforce during the mid-season break, long one, and in order to prepare, for the second half of the season, I thought it would be nice, to trade blows, trade hot takes, okay? As hot as you want, about the topics that you want. I kept it fairly competitive. You already told me like it's less competitive, more like meta level stuff.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it goes. It was surprisingly difficult for me to make them. We don't know each other's hot takes. So we'll see. So just to give a brief disclaimer, the way I interpret hot take is, I have a perception of what the community thinks, what generally is believed. I then have an opinion that feels a certain way about that opinion. I don't necessarily believe this is absolutely true. It might actually not be my dominating belief, but because of how sternly the commonly held opinion is held against that, as I perceive it, I want to say something. You just sometimes want to say some stuff, okay? And that's like, it's going to be a cathartic moment here. And we agreed that you will start. So, give me
Why
one.
am I here? Why'd you pick me? Why'd you pick me for this exercise? Am I synonymous with hot takes? It's like, come on now.
We need a new rascal end of the season, okay? That's all I'm trying to bait here.
You've caught me in rare form because I got home a couple of days ago from my mini moon with my wife. And
congratulations, yeah.
And so it was on the East Coast, and so I'm a little bit jet lagged to a point where I wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, and then I also had a little wine yesterday, and so I'm sleep deprived and hungover, and this is gonna be just Johnny on full display. It's gonna be amazing. Happy to be here. Okay, so let me start off, and it actually ties into your intro. Here we go. Hot take number one. As much as we discuss hot takes are not worth it, and they're detrimental to the personalities who tell them.
Yes.
People always on Reddit or social media or whatever, they're just like, oh, we like personality. Oh, we like people having fun. As someone who's repeatedly done hot takes for like the past few years, it's just straight up not worth it. It's just a waste of time. They hurt your reputation. It's so stupid. So yes, I am a bit of contrarian at the heart. There's nothing that just like riles me up, like having Avast make a very reasonable point, something that's like very true. Avast is truing. And then I'm just like, I just have to say something that's controversial. I have to say something that's a contrarian because it's just the way I have fun. I have fun doing hot takes. But actually, it's not worth it because when the viewer and the community, when they read the hot take, when they watch the hot take, there's always going to be a part of the viewer or the reader or whatever that actually like straight up thinks it's just me spitting facts. Like, Reinforce thinks he's so smart right now, but it's actually so dumb because this is a dumb take. He's an idiot for saying this. Especially if it's a hot take about like Houston Outlaws, the Houston fans are going to be like, oh, what an idiot. Like, how can he believe this? This is such a dumb take. And so for every hot take you put out there, there's going to be a subset of the person engaging with that just straight up thinks you're dumb. And if you do enough hot takes, there's going to be so many people time over time who thinks you're dumb, who thinks you're bad, who thinks you have dumb takes, that actually it's going to hurt your brand. It's going to hurt your reputation in the scene. And slowly, hot take by hot take by hot take, people are just going to think that you don't know what you're talking about and that you're washed up and that, you're just not as smart as the other people in the scene. So hot takes are not worth it, and they're detrimental to personalities. And so stop embracing hot takes as much. There you go. That's my first one.
Great.
There's no reward to it. There's no reward. Like, it's actually bad to do it. You shouldn't do it.
Well, I would counter that while it tanks your brand, it ekes out that engagement. Actually, the emotional energy created against you, yes, it takes a part of your soul, but it adds it to the scene, right? Like the energy created there, rising tide, you're drowning. That's the game, right?
Okay, all right. But I just don't know if in like when I eventually leave the Overwatch scene at some point, I don't know people will be like in the Reddit thread just like, oh, I'm gonna miss Johnny's hot takes. I think it'll be more like, oh, I didn't know what he was talking about in the later stage of his career. He was good in like 2017, 2018, but 2023, he just said some dumb shit about some teams, and like I don't think people. I think the it works in real sports, and that is where it ultimately comes from. So if you want to like really dive into hot takes and like why it's so prevalent now when it comes to sports broadcast stuff like that, it actually works out if you're like on ESPN, if you're Stephen A, or you're like an old timer who talks about like, you know, Michael Jordan era and stuff like that. It actually pays off because these folks are on TV and they take, you know, their TV takes that they do on shows. First of all, they need people to tune into the shows and do like hot takes, like spicy stuff that gets people riled up, because that's people will return to the TV show. But also it allows those people to put those takes onto Twitter. It allows the ESPN Twitter and, you know, and NBA Twitter, stuff like that. I follow mostly NBA, to like engage with the show, to engage with the takes. And so that is where like the engagement pays off. And you're seeing like ESPN shell out like big money to these big personalities who gets engagement, who gets people to tune into the show, who gets people to engage with the brand. But like in the Overwatch scene, like I don't get paid the bag to have hot takes. Like, why am I incentivized to have hot takes? Why am I incentivized to have people ratioing me on Twitter because I say something dumb? Like I think my hottest take of the year was when the day when they said the talents were gone, and like there was this huge commotion about Overwatch PvE being dead and all that stuff. And I tweeted out that like the Overwatch 2 as a live service game is actually like one of the best in gaming. If you compare it to like Apex or Valorant, or I don't know, like throw in whatever game. And I was just like, hey, the Overwatch 2 Battle Pass is actually or live service rather, like the skins and the new heroes, the new maps. We got new game mode coming out. Like it's actually like really good in the scene comparatively. And people, I got ratioed so hard. I swear to God, I think I had like 1,000 replies to one tweet. It was absolutely insane. And I don't think it was worth it. Like I think people look at my Twitter profile and just like, oh, that's the guy who made that dumb opinion about the Overwatch 2 live service game, rather than like, oh, that was entertaining. Oh, I like this guy. That was more worth me reading. I got a thrill out of that. So I don't know. That's kind of where I stand out. There's no reward structure for me in Overwatch esports to have hot takes. Whereas in ESPN and traditional sports, it's actually worth it for personalities. They get paid millions of dollars to get an engagement. It's just not worth it for me. I don't get paid more in my Overwatch League talent contract to have engagement on Twitter and hot takes. Like it's just not worth my time.
It makes sense, yeah. I think there is a world where that actually probably, like, you could probably make that an engine in some way. I think there's a point where the audience just understands what Stephen A does, right? Like, it's for Stephen A, it's more the case than for others, I would say, that there is a kayfabe way, you know, like a not so serious part, and like the showmanship and like the facial expression and all of that, right? You can hide a pebble of truth in there, but you got to play it up, right? And as you maintain that, and as everyone calls you stupid, eventually everyone just becomes enlightened to the wisdom of that moment. Okay, like I feel like
yeah, that is a dream. I wish for that, really. But you know, when I sit next to Jake on the Watchpoint pre-show, and he says something that is so smart about the professional scene, and then I take up like an ember glowing stick and I poke him with it, like I poke and prod with my stick about hot takes and shit. Like I actually think people might at some point just find it annoying. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think the artificial stuff is not right. I'm still doing it to you, but I still think there's a lot of recognition. Like you got a couple of great copy pastas, okay, over the years based on the restaurant and whatnot.
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
That's I think like that is probably, that's just the fun. That's not necessarily the worst. So that was your first hot take?
Yeah, that's my hot take. It sets up the episode well. Where it's a hot take episode, and the first hot take is that hot takes are not worth it, and you should stay away. Stay away from hot take. Don't do them.
I just love that you set up the bear trap, and now I got to put my hand in it. So
let's go.
I don't know in which order I should do this.
I got my best ones like first, and then like my last two are like pretty you know, I don't think they'll garner much discussion. So I'm just coming out with the bangs. Like the first three are like my bangers. You gotta think about the viewer retention stats on a
okay,
YouTube video.
okay.
Like, if you save the best for last, like people have tuned out at that point.
Then let's put the one that will piss the most people off right here.
Let's go.
Okay?
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
The way Avala handled the team is actually completely correct. Only the internal stuff is a problem. Only the internal management is the problem. The outside strategy is completely correct, given the limitations and the situation that we're currently in. Okay.
Okay. I need a timeline on this. From when? Like from when Dallas Fuel picked up Hanbin and Fielder and all those guys, or from this season, or?
I would say starting from mid last season, right? So they pick up the Odyssey guys, right? And. Right. Keep in mind, I'm only talking about the meta level, not the internal handling, right? So the meta level is, this team is underperforming. One guy just quits your team, is probably the best player, right? Glister, retires, and you got to figure some stuff out. So what do? You probably, in that situation, you can't really, like the less preferable thing is to go to the Koreans, that what she had to do now, okay? Want people in the United States that can play from home. And who do you go to? Probably the best contenders team that is available, right? You could have built maybe a roster that was slightly more adapted. Maybe you could have made 1 or 2 pickups. It's just hard to convince them, right? Because that's part of the argument. The offer that the Paris or the Vegas Eternal have is not as attractive for many as collegiate, right? So there your pool is off. If your pool is NA contenders, you are already lost, okay? So then she does this. I don't think particularly like the pickup of Odyssey is too big of a problem for most people. I think like that made some sense to some people, unless you want to attack.
At the time, they were the best team. And they're also proven in a meta, like going into the Junker Queen meta, right? They had already played the contenders meta, and they were the best Junker Queen Jotes team. I'm defending your hot take now.
Right. Like just okay. I think this is not the hot part. So they then go into the off season after a bad second half of the season. Now keep in mind what many well-regarded folks in the scene are doing. They are reuniting these contenders lineups. O2 is doing it in the Shock. Toronto Define is doing it with AT. Why not reunify Odyssey with their coach, right? That now is available to them. They didn't actually copy-paste Odyssey. They actually brought on Vulcan, for instance, right? Like, who was already, to call that last year's rookie season is a little bit of a problem for me. But
yeah, the New York stint.
But also, yes, there were probably... Maybe there were 1 or 2 players that you should have rather taken, but the story of Odyssey and like the friendship aspect and all of that makes some sense, right? Like the point in time where you could have arguably, and where my argument is the weakest, is should you have blown up that team when you see in the preseason that they can't even beat Samito? Okay, that's the point of no return here.
Not great.
Okay,
not great.
So. You then play the first half of the season, and now something crucial happens, okay? Not only does your team suck unbelievably hard, right? You also are in a position where, like the situation during this midseason, as I perceive it, there's a little bit more money now available. Teams are making plays, right? There's some macroeconomic thing happening. You know, we heard that from the Toronto Defiant. I'm just, really reading the tea leaves here. But I assume there was some guidance from the organization. Because if you are going to cold quit this, you're probably not going to do anything about this team, right? So what do? You source NA contenders. Any guys that are better than the current guys you have probably tell you, oh yeah, we're going collegiate. Why would we play from home, right? So what do? You go to Korea and try to pick up the best players there. Right? Keep in mind, like, the players scouted, especially Irony, I think, is a great pickup. The other 2, we'll get to see. I think a lot of other teams passed on those guys. We'll see how it ends up in the end. Knife, I asked a couple of folks. They were pretty high in APAC. It's not going great right now, I will say. But once again, they just started scrimming, right? But just from a macro level, I don't think the decisions-making process of picking up Odyssey, sticking it out, getting the actual coach in hopes of getting them to the level that they were in APAC, in contenders, then like also augmenting the team slightly with Vulcan, going into the first half of the season, seeing that it doesn't work, seeing that the situation changed, and now picking up Koreans because there's, dude, NA contenders, it's trash. Like, honestly, even the...
just look at the Pro-Am. The Pro-Am is the receipts.
Like, they were probably... You could... I don't know, what do you go to? Like, is Boat available? Pummy, I'm not sure if these guys would even entertain that offer. But, like, the collegiate system in some parts is also wasted on the North American player, okay? Like, you know, the amount of resources flying in there, put that into Korean contenders and see that flourish. But the underlying problem is that if you don't have a team house and a salary of that level, that you have only so many options, right?
Yeah.
If your deal is worse than a collegiate team, then you look at the macroeconomic situation or the macro situation. Once again, it's absolutely possible that she mishandled the internals, and folks have talked about it. But only looking at the decisions making from the outside, my issue, like, are you really going to burn the team down as you see preseason performance and just kick everyone out and try to finagle something? The optics of that are worse than what ended up happening, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's a respectable hot take. It's very much counter narrative right now. I think, especially with Benbest coming out, and who else? It was Benbest and Malthel as well had words to say about how Avala was handling it. I can't speak to that. I can't speak to the internal atmosphere and like what day-to-day life was. Why?
Keep in mind, my take and theirs could be compatible, right? Like, she could play everything macroeconomically or macro strategically correct. She just mishandles the internals. That's possible.
Yeah. Your hot take is like regarding the pickups and like how to navigate the results and like how to do that stuff. I think it's a respectable hot take. I think the problem I have with it, or just like the disappointing thing about it, is you just look at Valiant. Like, you just look at Valiant. You look at New York, for example. Like, they put together like reasonable teams. But compared to what Vegas did in the offseason.
What New York apparently still is putting into their team is actually quite respectable. Like, I think like they have a facility.
Money-wise?
Yeah, they have a facility. They have like a solid coaching staff. They have dope content going on. I don't know. I don't think New York at least is mid-tier in terms of investment, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I just didn't jive with them, like, barely doing anything in the offseason. Like, that just, like, I think, I don't know where that Gunbako would come from, that, like, if the team doesn't mesh within, like, the first 3 weeks or whatever, it's never going to. I don't know where that came from. But, there is some truth that, like, if Vegas Eternal, what did it go, like, the later half of last season? They went, like, 0-14.
I agree. Yeah. Yep.
Like, at that point, you need to swap out, like, 2 or 3 players. And... the coaching pickup, yeah, I get it. But the point I made on Pratchett repeatedly, which is like, there's no way to like change the team environment from the end of last season to the start of this one. Like, there needs to be a new energy. There needs to be like a new vibe. I'm meeting this new person for the first time, and like it's motivating me.
Yeah.
Like, you need that, in my opinion. So
in my mind, that was Empress and that was Vulcan. But also keep in mind, there was a little bit of these guys actually, because they were playing contenders, didn't have access to Overwatch 2 for a reasonable amount of time before they were picked up, right? Like, theoretically, there's an argument where they were just like running after everyone else because they had less availability of Overwatch 2, right? But yeah, like, the weakest point for my argument is after the season. But then again, are you going to take eat the frog and like kick a team that's a North American contenders team right after the second half of the season? Do we throw those guys to the wolves? It's also not great.
You gotta be ruthless. I mean, this kind of went downhill. I feel like when J Mac became the head coach and they got rid of Get Amazed.
Right.
Was that sort of like that was sort of like the moment where things started to go south for this org? Look, people. This is what hot takes episodes look like, right? Like people are gonna clown on you for that take, and they're gonna be like, "How can you guys say that?" That's what's coming your way, and you know that. But
yes. Yeah, I already feel it.
I think it's a good hot take. I think it's a good hot take. I commend you for that one. I think it's counter narrative. I don't think. Let's put it this way. I think Avala's stock, it's at the bottom. Like it's so far down. Like no one appreciates, no one likes Avala, and like she, God bless her. I hope it goes well for the Vegas Eternal. That's an interesting way to look at it. That like how much more could Avala realistically have done with this roster since the middle of last season when you can't get visas for like Korean players and you can't have them play like overseas, and so you need to pick up North American players. You pick up the best North American team, or like top 2 at least, in the meta that was coming up. It goes to shit, and then in the offseason you're sort of in a tough spot. I don't know what their contract situation was in the offseason, where like did they renew people, or like what did that look like? But there's only so many moves that Avala had at the time, and like you can't say that she like. It wasn't like they had the shock and just like, oh shit, we're a bottom team now. Like, it was a bad team that went to another bad team. Like, they didn't have that many moves to make. It's not like they could have acquired tons of talent. You can't blame her too much. I just wish that I would like to see that Get Amazed season through, where they had a good 21, I think.
Yeah.
And then see what that would have looked like in 22. They got rid of Naga. There were a few moves that propelled their downward momentum, but it would have been.
That's that's fair.
Yeah.
I think once again, I think most of the stuff, like if we ever get to hear what the issue is, will probably come from like what type of internal situations were created that these guys are talking about. And I also think still, like as much as we talk about how coaches are, not that valuable, I think folks gotta get on the train that a leadership type personality actually adds a ton. And it's sort of like this, I think it's a Taoist saying of like the best leader is when the people like who does something to the social fabric of the village, and then the people afterwards say we did it out all ourselves, right? That's the ideal leadership situation where you just apply a couple of pressure points, you keep everyone in check, and then like they carry themselves into good positions. And I think it's pretty. I think Gator is also underappreciating his input on his team's success in that way.
Yeah. Do you think there's a? Do you think it's genuine, or do you think there's some? We should move on, by the way, because we have more hot takes to go. But yeah, I mean, Gator does a great job inspiring confidence in his own players and like self-belief, and like he says like, "Oh, my players are just like amazing." So, but he still builds like the culture and like the environment in which they perform, right? So
yeah,
he still has a say in that. But yeah, anyway, do you want me to move on to my second hot take?
Give me the second one.
All right, I feel like considering the community narrative and the community kind of like popular opinion, what people say on these days, I feel like this is kind of a hot take. Maybe it's not that hot take, but here we go. I planted my flag in this one for quite a while now, so I don't think it comes as a surprise. The Overwatch League franchise system needs to stay.
Okay.
I don't think it's a big surprise. I'm coming out with this one. I've kind of had this belief for a while. Now, crucially, with that, I'm not saying that it needs to be a closed system and it needs to be 20 teams and things are great and things should stay the way they are. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, even if you look at other esports like Valorant, for example, maybe not League of Legends right now, especially LCS and A, they're not doing too great. But like, there needs to be teams that have safe spots in a franchise system that are returning. Like, you can't just have an open system to where like teams are always jockeying for the top spots, and they're like their place in the scene is uncertain, and they're like always fighting for their life. They're always fighting for their spot in the scene. I think you need at least some franchise teams who are paying money in the scene to keep coming back and have a secure spot in the scene, and that way they can use that to their advantage, to where they can say to sponsors like, hey, we have a guaranteed spot in this league. The game can make microtransaction content out of these teams because they know that they won't disappear. Like, for example, if you're the game, you can't just like, we're going to make player icons for Redbird Esports. It's just like, well, I mean, do we know if Redbird Esports is going to be around in 6 months? Like, are we going to invest time to make a Redbird Esports skins? As cool as that sounds, like, it's harder to invest developer time to make custom skins and create custom player icons and stuff like that for orgs that you don't know will exist. Which I guess Chain to Hunters, like, fuck, it kind of defeats the point. But I do think that there needs to be a core part of the very top division of Overwatch Esports that is franchising. And then if you want to open up the franchising to, you have contenders teams battling with the Overwatch League teams every stage and every bracket, sure, I'm all for that. If you want to open up the system a little bit to have contenders teams play the franchise teams, great, I'm all for that. I'd love to see that in the future. Maybe under a different format than this year. I think this year's format is a bit clunky in that regard. But I do think that there needs to be Overwatch League teams. I do think that there needs to be franchise teams as part of our esport. I don't think you can convert to a fully open system that's just open tournaments and open qualification systems all the time.
Would you keep the localization?
Wow, that's a good question. It's a really good question. We've sort of gone back and forth on this, right? And if you asked me 12 months ago, I would have said like no. I would have said like it's interesting. It would be interesting to see if we had our Cloud9s and our Optic Gamings and Fnatic and pick all these esport teams face, like if we just had the endemic esport brands. I still think that would be sick, like, because there will be some cross it's not cross pollination, what is it, cross kind of like promotion, where like the Cloud9 League of Legends teams, they promote the Cloud9 Overwatch team and etc. And like I think it's way more respectable to the rest of esports if they can look at Overwatch and be like, they're not doing the local markets things, and they're not doing the NA traditional sports things, like they're not doing the NFL stuff. But then the thing that kind of like made me question that stance was when you had the general managers on, and I think it was Washington Justice, who were just like, local sponsorships, like we're actually getting local fans into our buildings to cheer us on, and like we're actually doing pretty well here. And that made me question that stance, where I was like, well, maybe there are some teams in the league who are not doing their fair share when it comes to local activation in their respective cities and stuff like that. Like how many, I don't know, I don't want to name teams, but if you asked me 12 months ago, I would have said like I'm happy to move away from the localization and the city names and all that stuff into more endemic esports stuff. But if the teams are doing well, and if they're actually like activating their local markets, and they find that it's a point of strength for them, then power to them. Like they've actually successfully pulled something off. So
yeah, no,
why take it away from them?
I agree to that extent. I think there needs to be, and okay, this is also like as having been in esports too long, it's like I want that culture to be expressed here, right? I want the endemic esports brands to take part of the pie. That's the thing that we like attached to, right? That's the culture that we have. There's something to be said about the netizen culture or the surrounding culture of esports that was kind of killed off through the franchise system in the Overwatch League. I in some sense, I always have some resistance towards this localization. Like, if someone tells me I only got into this because my city's name is on this, I'm now a little bit suspect of you, okay? But I think there is a...
He will say that, but I actually think a lot of listeners is that person who is like, hey, I'm from London and there's a London Spitfire team.
Yeah,
I
maybe
think
it's
that
just
audience
being German,
exists.
to be fair. Like, we
Maybe.
are not at all like this, right? Like,
Okay.
we make it a point to not be proud. We were proud of not being proud, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
So...
How
Yeah.
very European of you.
Very true, yeah. No, but I think, like, the idea of a franchise system being kept around, maybe something like what Valorant has, I think it's a good idea. What I would like to have more of is either very pronounced values that fans can attach to, okay, or faces of the organization. I find it infinitely easier to get attached to 100 Thieves than other organizations because I know there's a guy with an established history that stands for certain things, that won't shy away, will be part of the promotional stuff. If I'm cheering for 100 Thieves in Valorant, I know that guy is pulling the strings and has certain values. If I do that in LCS, I know that guy's behind those traits. And, like, you know, like, I like the aspect where there are things for me to get attached to other than a brand logo, a color, and a random city name that is the best by a spreadsheet data, okay? I need something in terms of values or a personality that stands for values to reel me in order to buy into the franchise system. Otherwise, it looks pretty hollow and just a way for businessmen to secure their investment and not have to stand against the economic pressures of others doing it better than them, getting the attention instead, and, like, theoretically, you know, like, building better brands outside the gates, so to speak, and everyone's gatekept from advancing the product, right?
Yeah, I think the culture point is, like, very interesting, and I don't know, in the off season at some point, I said in a group chat or something that, like, I actually think that like Overwatch franchise paying a fee to teams to be in the scene and compete in the scene and activate in the scene. It's actually, like, pretty rewarding when it comes to marketing, but probably strictly when it comes to the endemic esports organizations that you point to, because all of these endemic esports brands, and I mean, they're moving away from endemic esports. They're doing other stuff, especially like 100 Thieves, right? They're doing, like, clothing stuff now. They're doing game developer stuff, right? But they are, like, their entire identity, like, they are professional culture brands. Like, that's their entire thing. Like, we want to grow our brand. We want to be culturally relevant. We want to have fans. We want to build fan bases. Like, that's what they're in the business of. So it actually makes sense to pay someone like 100 Thieves to, like, hey, we're the Overwatch franchise. We're going to pay you 100 Thieves to build culture and to activate your brand in our scene, because that's marketing. Like, we're paying you to do marketing for our product in our scene, and you are a professional brand, and so you are the best in the business when it comes to doing marketing, when it comes to brand building and stuff like that. It makes less sense. And I mean, you can always, like, pick on the worst brands, but even say, like, the LA Gladiators, like, you know, and they had the guard and they built up the guard, like, pretty successfully. But, like, some Overwatch League teams, they're not in the business of brand building. Like, they're not not to the same extent that some of these endemic esport brands. So I think it's a really interesting point, because I do think that if you and list some of these endemic esports brands, like, they're so obsessed with culture and being part of the gaming space and their branding and the way their logo looks, and, like, how to get fans involved, how to get engagement, like, engagement at such a large scale. Like, they're so invested in that. That's who they are. That I do think that if you can get them to become part of the Overwatch scene, it's actually, like, beneficial to the scene overall, because it just be such a boost to marketing on so many fronts and brands on so many fronts. So I think it's an interesting point, but
yeah, that's the one thing that I disagreed with the GMs with, where, yes, they said, like, well, we think, like, the league has all the commercial assets and whatnot, like, owns the product of the broadcast and whatnot. They are responsible towards making the content. I think that's only half true. You have access to your players. You should be building the brands of those guys as well. And honestly, it feels a little bit like these guys have vapor, okay? In the sense that if I made a skin for my team brand, let's say, even if let's say we had the opportunity to do this, right? Every player at the start of the season gets to help design their hero, right? The vast majority of the value and reason why people would buy that skin is the aesthetic value, not the brand value that these teams have built around their players. It would actually be incredibly small, like 5% or something. It's like, and as long as that is the case, where people are not actually attracted towards the MTX product because of the brands that these teams have built, then I'm sorry, but like, you are not holding, you know, your end of the deal in order to create these brands that are attractive for esports fans. What you're really asking for is charity from the developer to say, oh yeah, here's your logo slapped on it. We did all the aesthetic creation. It would have sold 95% of the same sales anyway, but please give me 25% of that. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how many people that buy Hangzhou's Spark skins buy them because they're pink versus how many because they're fans of Hangzhou Spark?
Yeah. And they are even probably even a little bit better at it because like their entire anime branding is probably pretty appealing, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like if you ask someone like Washington Justice, like if Washington Justice, obviously, like what are they going to do? Like if the Overwatch League allows some of these teams to revert to their endemic brands, like London Spitfire turns back to Cloud9, Seoul Dynasty becomes Gen G, you know, all this stuff. I actually think they'd be quite keen on that. Washington Justice, what do they do? Like where do they go? Do they change anything? Like, can they? So it depends on who you ask. But I can't help but feel a little bit that if you're Gen G, you kind of just let us be Gen G Esports. Like, come on now. Like, why do we need to spin up two different brands? Why can't we all just have it under one umbrella, and then we can use our presence in the Overwatch scene to, you know, just build up the Gen G brand further, like to just promote the Gen G brand further, and then we can have that across multiple games, multiple brands, and we can just, instead of having two sponsorship decks where one is, hey, this is also something where we also have Seoul Dynasty. We also have this thing. Well, why not just like make it one thing, which is Gen G? So, I think it's interesting. You kind of convinced me here now that you know, it would be sick to have these endemic esports brands. I do think
it could still be franchised, right? It's still possible.
Yeah, it could still be franchised. Yeah, and you know, the one thing that I haven't said is just like if they straight up just like delete the Overwatch League as like a folder on the desktop, if you just move it to like the recycle bin and then they throw it out, I just think there's going to be such a like value destruction in the scene. Like so much money is going to go away. Like Cloud9 and 100 Thieves and all these organizations, they're not just like, oh, the Overwatch League is gone, let's get reinvested in Overwatch. This is our time. You know, like they're not going to do that. I think so much money will leave the Overwatch scene if the Overwatch League just gets deleted, that I think our scene will just be probably in the worst spot it's been since like a very long time. And I think that would be very bad for the scene. So I think, especially in this current economic climate and the tough spot that esports is in, if the Overwatch League faded away, I think that a lot of the current pros would just be forced to retire, go back to school, go back to work, because there wouldn't be any salaries. There wouldn't be any salaries and any money for them to be incentivized to keep playing.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to space out. I've two takes that are sort of about the same team, so I think I need to get one of them out here.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. I already feel it's not worth it. I'm already feeling it. Okay.
God bless you, Yiska.
The trade, or the fact that the San Francisco Shock signed Vindame, is one of the most historic throws in Overwatch League history.
No.
This kid was mediocre, and it's a season where insane levels of main support players were traded, and you got none of those when you're the San Francisco Shock. Is crazy to me. You got Chiron, you got Chio, you got Faith, you got Lee Jagon, you let Violet go, and then you're getting mid-ass Vindame? No, I'm sorry. Like, that's a fumble, and you're feeling it now. That's the problem. A lot of the problem that you're having, and now you're struggling with that. The estimation of, I think I was probably, The problem is, here's the issue.
Oh, what a hot take.
I'm probably on record saying that he's very good, and probably in in a roll stock competition somewhere on one of the podcasts that I did. So I'll look like a hypocritic idiot here. But already in the preseason, when I talked to folks and they were reviewing the footage, people prior to the season, it must have been 3 or 4, told me this is an epic throw. And now, I'm sorry, I'm seeing it. Like, okay, you probably can't get Chio, right? Like, Atlanta probably has the back. Faith is probably an outside shot because also it's hard to get him out of that team. Lee Jae-gon probably also got a back from Boston.
Wait, did you just compare Faith to Vindime?
Oh, Faith is way better.
Good.
But you're telling me that relatively low-paying Florida Mayhem gets Charong ahead of you? Not getting Charong. Like, I get that you might not get anyone else. I get that you can't keep Violet because he wants a change of scenery. You gotta get Charong then. Come on. And this guy is now styling on you. It's like top 3 in the league. Right? Like, I don't know. Or top 3 in terms of his team. Right? He's performing. I'm not sure if he's a top 3 main support, but he's very close. If not that, right?
Okay.
Thoughts?
I have a Reddit thread up on my screen currently.
Yeah.
And it's about 200 upvotes. It's from 8 months ago. And the title is Vindime Robbed. That's the title. And the text is, how on earth has Vindime not gotten Roll Star if Isayaki and Chio get one? Absolute daylight robbery. And then it's just, teams, the fans of the teams like battling like, no, our player should have gone Roll Star. No, our player should have. But Vindime legitimately got Roll Star and Rookie of the Year votes. Like there were people who voted for Vindime Rookie of the Year over Proper. And so
that's crazy.
His reputation at the time at the end of last season was actually like really high. Like people were very in on Vindime. So maybe everyone was wrong. I don't know, but I think it's kind of hindsight history to just be Vindime sucks. Like people really raved about Vindime last season when he wasn't so.
Could be the case. I think I was probably one of those. The thing that makes me believe this is less true is because of the folks that I trust in the preseason saying like, I looked at 3 scrims and I was not interested in that guy anymore, basically.
That's fair.
So well. The second take will go into a little bit more into their issues, but I certainly I already feel a pain. I already like someone's going to dig up a comment I made.
I don't even think that's too hard of a take. Like I think Vindime, pretty commonly held belief is that he's this year's FD god. Like that he was this really great main support talent that came to the Shock and started underperforming and started being behind a lot of like misplays and like it wasn't contributing to winning Overwatch, right? And so I don't think it's too hot of a take. It's a hard take. Like you don't really want to say it. Like you're kind of like, like I could say this, but like I don't really want to say it. It's kind of rude. It's kind of mean. Like no one wants this out in the world. Yeah. And so I don't think it's a hot take. I think it's a hard take. It's a hard take from Yiska that it was a throw.
Yeah. Yep. All right.
It's that tough parenting.
Also just superpower by hindsight. Love you, Shock. Like
yeah.
It's an unfair one. I should have said this in the preseason. If I say this in the preseason and it happens, that's a tasty one.
The cloud just it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's the opposite of me saying Dallas will be good this year.
Yeah, they're probably going to trade him or something, and this kid is going to become like top 3 instantly, and I look like an idiot. It's going to happen. Something's going to happen.
Oh, dude, if we went back to Seoul and just started like pounding, oh my god, that'd be amazing. Platchat put Shock number 1 by the way over Atlanta Reign, but it just in the preseason, so that was fun.
I did briefly, then I heard the scrims, I was like, ooh,
yeah,
go down, and I still had the top 4, I think.
Mistakes were made. And we just, if you listen back to the episode, we're just like, Yeah, Atlanta Rain is a better team, but we're gonna meme on people who hate the shock, and so we just put them number one. Oh, mistakes were made. Yeah. Curious to see. Can't wait for your next shock take. All right, this is arguably this next one. This next one is so dumb. Like I might get fired from my job, but it's arguably like the hottest hot take I have.
Yeah.
But I think there's potential. There's room for it. Like it's not out of the question. Here we go. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm gonna say this. The World Cup playoffs will have a higher peak viewership than the Overwatch League finals.
I think you're right. And that was a good gut punch. Woof.
They're on Twitch. They might be co-streaming.
Yeah.
You get everyone
certainly
involved. It's just so much more of a popular product. Like the brand of the World Cup, people love it. They get in all these countries, all the influencers, all the personalities. It's at somewhere.
No, we know. I think it was announced that it was at BlizzCon.
I don't know. I've been on mini moon. I don't know. I've been away. I don't know what's going on.
All good.
So it has so many things going for it.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be the most popular product. The best Overwatch esports product should be the Overwatch League finals. And, credit to the Overwatch League last year. The finals were insane. It was the best finals we've had. The LAN was insane. The arena stadium was insane. And we actually had like really good viewership for the finals compared to what we've done historically. But the World Cup has so many things going for it that I could see the World Cup playoffs having a higher peak than the Overwatch League Grand Finals, which would just throw the scene for a loop. Like I think it would just do things to people's perception and mental.
Yes. The thing is, at what point is the viewership so much better that you're almost thinking, let's lean into that more. Less Overwatch League next year, more World Cup. 50-50, maybe 60-40.
I think it's quite enticing proposal that you're presenting there.
If the data was there, right? Like it's building the local markets and whatnot. Like if you could actually buff this out, it's an interesting question. The thing is, I think the viewership for the qualifiers were not that big, but also there was not much promotional stuff done, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm super scared either way to find out how much the 25% will account for. I'm not sure when they announce, because there's a revenue split, right, for the World Cup skins, and 25% of the revenue will go to the winning teams, right?
And so you're saying, like, what if the skin sells for like 750,000 and the split is like 100K?
What
if
it's super low, or what if it's super high? Like, because the thing is, I think it's probably going to be a little bit underwhelming because these skins aren't that great. I think they're just like, relatively meh. If you had them colored just like in the country's color, then that would fly. I think that's much more likely to work out. There's probably a legal issue in doing that. But yeah, I'm not sure. Like maybe it'll be moderate, but I could totally see like how it's super big or super small, depending. They're not running a lot of promotion for those skins, but it is an interesting idea to think about, like how you would react given either of those extremes happening.
Yeah, it's scary because I mean it's unprecedented. We haven't really done this, and I mean people are gonna compare it to like Dota or whatever and be like, oh, they raised $10 million. Like, how did you not raise this amount of money for Overwatch or whatever? Like, there's always going to be that crowd that shits on whatever the sum is going to be. It's also just like one skin. It's like one Sojourn skin. Like if you're not interested in the World Cup, if you're not playing Sojourn, like, I think there's a little incentive to buy the skin compared to other games. Like some of the Valorant knives, for example, for their funding, like they're insane. Like they're just straight up cool. And like a knife is something that every player has.
Mm-hmm.
Not every player in Overwatch is going to be interested in a single Sojourn skin, right? So that it's going to be, the dynamics of it is going to be very interesting. I wonder if this goes well. Like, is there a path to having next year like a 2023 Overwatch esports battle pass that you can like buy on the side?
I wish.
And then that funding, and then it'd be like a battle pass, so there'd be like tons to it. There'll be like Overwatch League skins, and there'd be like maybe some, I don't know, some I don't know how you'd divide it between World Cup and Overwatch League, but some kind of like pass that is like almost like a compendium, like almost like a Dota compendium, but it's a battle pass instead, right? I wonder what that would look like and how that would perform over the course of a year. So it's scary. There's going to be a lot of big revelations later this year about how well it's going, and
they tried in the mid-season, right, to get some viewership. Like I think the viewership incentives for the mid-season were among the biggest that we ever had, right? Like you got battle pass levels for free if you were watching, skins and all that stuff, right? Like it was pretty considerable. So in part, I think like that's super cool that we're making this available. I think we're still having like a bit of a PR issue to get that info out to folks. But yeah. I honestly think you're probably going to be right. I highly expect that just by virtue of it being on Twitch, probably
exactly
the multi-streams, I could totally see also even wildly different content. What who's to say like Ibai doesn't have anything to do that day and he's just going to stream Spain, right? Already over at that point. Like that guy's going to have more than an Overwatch League grand final. But
exactly,
yeah, we'll see.
That'd be a plot twist if he started streaming the World Cup. Yeah, it's man, it's scary. I mean, also like the thing we had going for us last year, sorry, I don't want to drag this on for too long, but like the Overwatch 2 hype was like almost at its peak when the playoffs came around last year, and like you got drops. Like that was one of the first drops, and everyone was like, "Oh, the new game is out! Like, oh, let's go get these drops." Like there was actually like major incentive. Like the Overwatch 2 hype has kind of died down a little bit.
Yep.
I'm curious to see what Season 6 will do to the PR and the player base and all that stuff. Yep. But who knows how popular Overwatch is going to be once the playoffs come around.
Yeah, I think we'll see. Really what we need to do is only, like, Overwatch is still a well-frequented game. It's just a super fragmented game. We just got to find ways to engage the Overwatch TikTok audience. These guys, there's so much going on there, right? Or like the more general player base. And I think World Cup is a good way to engage that, right?
Yeah. I'm so out of the loop. I don't know how to engage the Overwatch audience.
I mean, I don't think anyone does.
Like the general. Like, like even like how many play console, how many are TikTok. Like, I don't know these stats. Like, I don't know where they are and where discussion is and where people get their Overwatch fill, so to speak.
Sure, yeah. Okay. I'm thinking. I honestly don't know if this is a hot take. You tell me if this is a hot take.
Okay, all right.
It feels like it's one, but then it probably isn't. Okay. Kevster shouldn't be a role star this year. You got. It's a crazy one that you got to take on the
You're saying this to a Swedish person, by the way.
Right.
I'm Swedish. Okay, make the case. Make the case.
Right. Okay. First, I got to fill up whoever is going to be the DPS role stars, right?
Sure.
Gimme Lip. Gimme Stalker. Okay? These guys are set. And I think Alpha Yi is set.
Alpha Yi is set. Ooh, okay. Yep. All right. Yep.
There's two that I think perform better than Kevster as well. And okay, the one is once again going to get me killed, but I think Proper had a better season so far as well. And the one that I probably can get some people back onto this train that this take is correct is I think Decay had a better season than Kevster as well.
Oh. I mean, that is the title. Like, Decay should be a role star over Kevster. Like, that is...
Yeah.
Oh, that hurts. Like, that hurts. As a Swedish person, that hurts.
Yeah. Not even made it to Seoul, bozo.
Oh my god. I don't know what to say.
Honestly, his tracer is still different. When he gets off, I'm having my questions. And
let me ask you this.
Right? Yeah.
Would Kevster be better than Decay if Kevster was on Boston Uprising in that situation, in that team? Would Kevster be better than Decay in
Just
that situation.
based on gameplay. You're not talking social situation, nothing.
Yeah, sure, because he's Swedish and a team of Koreans. But I'm speaking of like, is Kevster's skill set better than Decay's, like individually, like head to head? To where the point, like, if Kevster played with Smurf, if Kevster played with Lee Jagon and Isayaki and Twilight, like,
at this point, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. This season
you think he's dropped? You think he's dropped off? You think Kevster's dropped off?
I think he dropped off this season. Yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah. But he's super close. Think he's super close.
No, I can't do this. I can't, as a Swedish person. I can't get there. I'm sorry. I can't.
Did you catch up to the World Cup?
I think Kevster is just like Proper. Kevster is a victim of his situation and his team. I think that this Gladiators team this year is worse than last year. I don't even think that's much of a question. And I think he suffered as a result. Kevster, it's not his fault the team Sweden was garbage in the World Cup. It straight up wasn't. Like, he tried his hardest and the team wasn't good enough. I'm sorry. Like, these players like Kevster and even Proper, like I think you have a hard time looking at Proper and saying like, oh, his Proper is way worse. Like, his team has kind of been garbage this season. Like, it's not his fault. And so as much as I want to give credit to these people who made the midseason madness and stuff, I think individually, like head to head, it's probably the way it's probably going to end up is that people look at the results, who made the tournaments, who won the most matches and stuff like that, and it's the way it's always been. They're going to credit the people who won the most. But I have a hard time leaving Kevster and Proper off the World Star list. Not because way, I live in the past, but
Leaf also not far away, I think.
Sorry?
Leaf is also not that far away from that group.
Yeah, it's going to be a very split ballot this year, I feel like, when people submit their votes. I just don't think I can get there. And, you know, like, you can say this about so many other people, right? There are so many other talented players who are on bad teams that, like, if they were in a good situation, they would just, like, do amazingly, right? But I think Alfie is a really interesting candidate because, like, he's not even, like, on a top team, and he's just, like, been fantastic this year, right? So I think Alfie is, like, a very strong candidate, and I think he deserves to be there. But leaving Proper and Kevster off, like, these are two of the best Overwatch League players in the world, or Overwatch players in the world, right? So
I was super close to the take, Alfie, you should be MVP frontrunner, as a hot take. But I was like,
he is valuable.
No, I'm just lying to myself. I don't know. Either Stalker or Lip probably just run away with it.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't mention any Houston DPS either. I just don't think I can get there. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. Happy could also be in the conversation, but, like, in my mind, the reason why I think Happy is great is because I have the hit scan idea in mind, and then I look at his performance, and he's like way overperforming my expectations. He just still gets his lunch money stolen by Stalker in comparison.
Yeah. I will say Happy has positively surprised me yet again this year.
Yes.
Like he's such a reliable player. Like, he feels reliable, and that, when I voted for World Star in the past, I voted for people who are flexible, who define, like, their role, not a hero. Like, you're not a World Star to me if you're a one trick. I'm sorry, you can be the best one trick in the world. That, like, to me is not World Star. Oh my god. But going back to Happy, like, I think Happy has like, been really good and versatile and reliable in so many different ways. Like, playing Sombra even, and, like, going out of his comfort zone to play heroes that he's not typically known for. Like, is Tracer and Sombra has, like, been good when he's played it this year. Yeah. I can't get there. I can't get there. I'm sorry.
Actually just happy
I'm sad.
that
you made me sad.
I'm just happy that you think this is our take. I didn't even, like, honestly, this is probably, I thought that was my minus one.
Apparently you said Decay. You said that Decay should be a role star next to Alpha E. Like, that is, people don't talk about this shit. That is a hot take. Like, it goes against the grain. It goes against the popular sentiment. I think we'll see more of that take, and you're the instigator. You instigated a new topic in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a role star thread on competitive Overwatch today, day of recording? My
Could be.
roll star so far. Okay, they put Kevster in there. Alpha E seems to be pretty popular, yeah. So people like Alpha E. That seems to be the popular sentiment. But no one says Decay here.
Okay.
But wow. Decay instead of Kevster. All right. So I'm going to my next hot take here.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of spins off nicely of your hot take.
Mm-hmm.
But when we consider the best performing teams in the Midseason Madness, people are going to look at the Midseason Madness teams. They're going to look at Houston Outlaws, Atlanta Reign, Boston Uprising, and then followed by Mayhem and Hangzhou Spark and all these teams. And they're going to look like these are the best teams in the league. These are the favorites going into the second half of the season.
Yep.
And I say no.
Uh-oh.
I say that we don't fully have a fantastic understanding of who the best teams will be in the second half of the season because it's so dependent on the tank meta. The tank meta determines so much of what teams are great and who are the best teams in the league that we actually have no idea. Like they will fluctuate so much. So when you look at some of these teams, I'm gonna read out some stats to you. I came prepared for this one take only. When you look at the tank play rates in the 2023 season, it's 42% Winston, 22% Ramatra, and 14% D.Va.
Yeah.
Winston by a large margin than Ramatra than D.Va. Okay. If you look at 2022, it was Winston 26%, Junker Queen 24%, Saria 16%, Doomfist 10%, Sigma 9%. There is just so many more off-tank heroes in 2022 compared to 2023. All right. And that was part of the reason why I think if you look at some of the people's preseason power rankings, mine, for example, I heavily thought that that is going to continue. When I did my research in the offseason, I was like, there was a lot of off tanks being played last year, and I think we'll see a lot more off tanks this year. So when I look at Dallas Fuel, I'm like, holy shit, they have Hanbin. Like Hanbin is going to be amazing for the Dallas Fuel still, and people are kind of sleeping on it. And it just so happened that Winston, Ramatra, and D.Va has been the three most played by far this year. So Winston teams are just going to graduate to the surface. They're going to be the best teams. If you have fantastic Winston, you have such a massive leg up over all the other teams. So when you look at Houston Outlaws with Fearless, Boston Uprising with Smurf, and then I guess Atlanta Reign, we didn't know how good Donghack would be going into the season. But even, Hawk played some D.Va here and there. But so Florida Mayhem with someone, if you had a great Hangzhou Spark, Gushwei, playing most of the time, just playing Winston meta, the best teams in the mid-season manners were just fantastic Winston teams. If we go into a Junker Queen meta, if we go into a Saria meta, if we go into a Doomfist meta, how will the strength of these teams change? I think that Atlanta Reign has a really compelling case to being just super well-rounded because Hawk can do all that stuff. But Hangzhou Spark, if they permabench, for example, and just play or Houston Outlaws, if they're forced to permabench Fearless instead of Gargoyle, Boston Uprising, if they're permabenching Smurf instead of Kalios, these teams won't be dominant going into the second half of the season. They just won't be the far away and best teams. And I think a lot of teams, like the Gladiators, for example, now even with Marvel, they could pick up some steam and actually be quite competitive with these teams and make up some of that ground. So people are just going to default that Houston, Atlanta, Florida, Boston will be dominant teams in the West, and Hangzhou Spark will continue to dominate in these. But honestly, it all depends on the off-tank versus main tank meta, and I don't think we can take these teams for granted. They'll be the favorites going into the playoffs right now.
Yeah, no, I think the volatility is probably even higher in APAC. If you think about it, Hangzhou could easily take a nosedive as soon as they got off Winston. I think, I don't know, get a Sigma meta, Sunny Piggy's there, right?
Solar Infernal Mag? Are we going to see Mag flex over to the off-tanks? Does that inspire confidence to you?
Yeah.
He'd prefer to be on Winston and Ball.
Yeah. No, I think there is something to be said about this. Here's another thing, a take I thought about. I just feel like Atlanta are so incredibly meta-agnostic. I think, the only
they
thing...
are by far the favorites.
The question mark is, what if Rhine? That's my one question that I have for them. What if we get a Rhine meta where Like, I don't know what Donghak has in terms of Ryan. And then also you kind of take away from the punch of your DPS line by putting them on, I don't know, May, right? Like, May McCree, okay, even there, Lip could probably still pop off, or whoever. I'm actually not sure who's going to pick up which role there, but yeah. And even then, you probably win that by support difference. It's a hard one. But yeah, I generally agree. I also think it's probably not going to change too much until we get that big patch. And that could actually be, with a new hero, with Flashpoint. That's a big question mark, right?
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
But
if we go into like a Sigma meta, like imagine if like Sigma has like 60% pick rate, and maybe like Doom. Like, what does a Doomfist meta look like?
Yep.
I have no idea. Like, I can't sit here and confidently say like, oh, Houston Outlaws, Boston, and Florida will continue to be the top teams. You know, and like they're versatile. Don't get me wrong, but I think I think people shouldn't get ahead of themselves because we were in a very Winston dominant meta, and if that changes, like I think a lot of teams might flip around and the scene might be a bit different. Maybe I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think what Houston has going for them is I think they're actually pretty well covered. They just don't have the hyper carry, play of someone like Fearless on Winston. That's just a hyper carry. But I would say if that meta changes, it's also likely going to change the DPS lineup, and you actually get those two guys on heroes that they're actually comfortable on. More comfortable on. Like if you have Happy on Hitscan, then Pelican on the flex, probably something like this, then you get the upside of the DPS. But yeah, I generally agree. I think that tanks are super important. I think the teams that only have one, that's the big question mark for me. And I also think like a lot of teams that are ridiculously underperforming. Part of me thinks like, what if we rolled out with a more off-tank meta and Toronto Defiant happens the same way? Are they then top 5 maybe?
Yeah, I mean, that is the question. Like, what teams would replace the teams I'm saying are in question now? But like, the Gladiators would be interesting. Who knows how Marvel slots into that team? But like Punk on Vancouver Titans, for example, I don't think he'd mind moving away from a Winston meta.
Yeah.
Washington Justice playing Mirror on the off tank heroes, and Kulush moving away from Winston. San Francisco Shock, even like Max and Junbin, like they'd probably be happy moving away from maybe a hard Winston meta, maybe.
Yeah. Getting like a ball or something from them.
Ball meta, yeah. So, but I think the East is even more interesting because then you'd have Guangzhou Charge and Piggy, Dallas Fuel and Hanbin, Seoul Dynasty with Void, and you'd have Mag on Seoul and Gushui on Hangzhou, like on the wayside. So it's going to be quite interesting. Fate now on the Shanghai Dragons. I'm really curious to see how that goes, but I really am. Like I think Shanghai Dragons are so interesting. I said it's preseason too. Like they're so interesting to me. But I think don't take the top teams for granted because we're still so reliant on the meta, and the meta will dictate what teams are good and bad. So
I actually like that as a hot take because I think uniquely for the first time because of downsizing, I think the top teams are actually uniquely qualified to weather these storms, also because they have double tanks very often. That's why I think it's a hot take, and I like it. It makes a lot of sense to me, yeah. Alrighty.
Here we go. You have 2 left, right? I have 1 left.
Yeah.
I have a smaller one left. So.
Okay, let's go with this one then.
Okay.
If you put the Soul Infernal into NA and let them play there.
Oh, stop. No.
They are a top 3 team in the Overwatch League.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
this team, the quality of their DPS players is maybe not Lip Stalker, but very close. They just have no idea on the meta strategies. They have a level of strategical understanding that rivals them. They just don't have the blueprint of how it's supposed to be played. It's uniquely bad for them that they don't have Lip to learn from in terms of the Sombra meta. And I think that hurt them a lot in the mid-season. But the hardware this team works with. Skewed. Mag is apparently just like unlocked now that he's out of the, the Washington facilities. Or I suppose also a little bit Boston in the second half. I think like just by the quality of their flex support and their DPS players, with the upside of Mag's flexibility, I think like they probably would slot for me. They're at least as good as Florida then. And then Uprising is a big question mark for me anyway. But yeah, I think if you give them the environment to practice in the top tier environment, which also relates to solo queue and whatnot, I think they become instantly much better.
So let's phrase it like this: in the mid-season madness, Soul Inferno lost in the loser bracket to Florida Mayhem. They lost 3-2.
Yes.
Closest margin possible, right? And so you're saying if Soul Inferno was in the West region this entire time, they would actually be better and compete with the likes of Boston Uprising. Like they would just be better than Florida Mayhem because of the boost of playing and scrimming in that region.
Yep.
I mean, it's a compelling case. It really is a compelling case when like put like that. It's a hot take too. I like the versatility they've shown, in that regard. Like they're showing appreciation for more of the Western style in that regard. It's very hard to make a counter case because of how they played for the Mayhem in the midseason madness. Like I can't say that they'll be worse, right? It's like, oh, Soul Inferno, if I go to West, it'll be worse. I don't think that's a reasonable argument. So it's only up. It's only a benefit of moving to the Western region. So I guess it's a hot take. You get a point. I can't argue with it. I can't say that they'll go there and lose to the LA Gladiators or, lose to Vancouver Titans, Washington Justice. Like I can't. The shock. Like I can't make the case that they'll go to the West and be worse than they were in the midseason madness. I will say. Do you think that the meta was really good for Soul Infernal? Do you think that some of their power this first half of the season was accredited to the meta more so than like their average performance in any given meta? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you think they overperformed this first half?
They, for large parts, didn't actually play the meta fully. Like they had Mac on some ball stuff, and
on Blizzard World, yeah.
And the thing is, I think you want MN3 off Sombra. That's probably pretty crucial to the overall quality of that team, I would say. Ideally, you have Zest on Genji. I think that's more ideal. Skewed being on Ana. It's kind of comical that this guy is not the brick player for them, right? But it's just how it works.
Yeah.
I think there are better matches from this team in comparison. Like, yes, okay. Mag on Winston is, of course, like, pretty good for them. I don't think he necessarily, like, okay, it goes to Ryan. I don't think it's a downgrade. It goes to Doom. It's not a downgrade. Junker Queen, don't think that's a problem. I don't think Mag necessarily gets in trouble in anything but, like, hard, like Diva or something like this, right?
Yeah, sorry, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's Junker Queen was all right, if I remember correctly, on Boston last year. Like, there was just a shit situation. Like, that Boston team last year was just...
Yes.
Especially when it came to the tanks. It was a mess. So, I think you've, with that, created the perfect hot take. You've catered to a very large fan base, which is the Soul Infernal.
Yeah.
And you have a take that I can't really argue with. Like, I can't argue with that take. Like, I can't come up with a counter argument for why they would go to the West and be worse off.
Here's also why it should work well. I got to peel away the onion a little bit so people realize. I'm saying, like you're saying, oh, they're in fraudulent APAC and like they only look good there. That's what I'm saying. APAC is fraudulent, but if you put them into an A, they could be. They almost were already proving that point, right? Like by the midseason madness. Yes, in scrims it wasn't great, and like I will say they weren't on par with the Mayhem either. But I think it's a lot is on environment and getting to. We always hear like getting the right scrim partners and whatnot, and you see the adaptations there. And sometimes it's also just having the right meta reads that your region doesn't have and whatnot. So I don't know. I feel like the hardware this team has is really strong, and we unfortunately won't ever or okay, this is maybe even the case. I'm not sure. I would have to check the schedule again, but I think if they don't have to go through play-ins, I hope they come over sooner, a week earlier, so they have as much practice in NA as possible, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, I just assume they directly qualified through the knockouts. By the way, like figuring out how the APAC qualification system works is breaking my brain. Like it's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the format seems very complicated this year. I don't know why that is. It's just a lot of different moving parts.
All right, last hot
this
take.
is not my take, but yeah, this is not my take. This is not the last take. I just a sidebar on that as it relates to your hot take. And again, it's not. I'm not saying this, but I've seen it mentioned a few places. What do you think about the opinion that Profit's been in the APAC region for the past 3 years and kind of been coasting in the APAC region instead of playing in the best Western region and against the hardest teams, best players?
Hard cope. Like I think that APAC is way underrated. In terms really the season where Chengdu Hunters and Shanghai Dragons were a thing and like dominating or like making deep tournaments runs is the year where APAC was ass. Like it makes no sense to me. Okay, like that. I think that's season 4 is probably the weakest case. Season 5, okay, we don't have much crossplay. I think I'm sympathetic towards the argument that they're not trying as much and like the meta read is probably a little bit worse. This year, okay, it's very clearly the case. But also remember, like they are operating at a heavy trade deficit, okay? Like get your econ bro hats on. Look at who went over. Like a region losing Lip, Stalker, you know, these guys is different, and you're not going to equalize that by, you know, I don't know, the remaining Dallas Fuel going over. I think it's very clearly the case that this region downgraded. And also, like the years prior, like the O2 Blast with Proper and whatnot, like those just were of a different breed at that point, right? Like that was also the year with Chengdu and Shanghai, by the way. So what I do believe, my take is, if you wanted to secure the claim of GOAT, you absolutely have to go and trade yourself to NA. Like chilling this year.
At this point, yeah.
Like, I don't know. I think that was a big blunder. And like, okay, if you think I just want to have a chill year, enjoy a year with family before you go to military service, fair enough. But like, if you want to establish yourself as the GOAT case, and part of me wonders why the burnout happened. Because he said something like, this is the first time I ever felt this way about my career. And it could just be, you know, someone is done with playing or any of the other reasons. But if it is because your first time in your career in a team that has no chance of winning the league, which is probably true, then that's also on you for choosing a team that was obviously not going to compete for the title this year, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's very demotivating to be on a team that, you know, fails. As someone who's been on both like Rogue and Misfits, like being on Misfits when like we were losing and like we were underperforming big time because we were supposed to be good. Like it's very demotivating to go into practice and just like, why can't we figure this out? It's like a puzzle that you can't solve. It's like every single day, it's just like, why are we bad? Why are we bad? Why are we bad? And like it gets to you and like it gets to your head, right? It gets to your mental health. And so I completely understand that. I'm maybe because he's just been on Seoul for so long, and like it is a bit curious that like he wouldn't. And again, we have no idea what his off-season decision making was like. But like, if Atlanta Reign, not now, but like in the preseason, we're just like, hey, we're making a new team, and like, is Profit available? Like, would you not kind of be like, or even Gladiators, like any of these teams, Boston, just like, hey, is Profit available? Like, would he not like cherish that opportunity to just be like, you know what, maybe we'll try this out. It's, and that then I could see how he genuinely is getting tired of maybe playing professionally, to the point where he's like, I can't be bothered. I gotta get like a visa. I gotta live in the States for a year. Like at that point, maybe some of the motivation to keep playing has truly faded. And maybe this is his last year. Like they've already said, like him and Void are going to the military next year, right? So
yeah.
But it is a bit sad that when Profit ultimately retires, having been the GOAT for so long now, for a few years now, that at the end of his career, when people say farewell, when people say goodbye to Profit, that there will be a crowd who will say that no, he's actually not the GOAT. Like it's actually Violet. There would actually be a debate. Like this is, I feel like the first year where it's actually like a debate of who is the GOAT.
Yes.
And it's a bit of a shame that when he leaves the scene, that will be the conversation rather than him definitively being the GOAT.
Get ready to hold the door. I'm telling you now, we will have to defend this take where people are, it's obviously always going to be valued. Like in prior seasons, like all of, like he's way over, like, no, we got to hold the door for that one when it's coming, okay? That he definitely should be considered still front-running candidate. And then like Violet is knocking, I think Lip is knocking. You know, these guys are just consistently at the top level, and I mean, someone like Lip still has many years left in his career from the way he's playing. So, I'm not sure what the situation is there. You know what's fun, by the way? I recently had to news this up. If your game is in the Asia Games, which League of Legends is, and you win a gold medal at that, you get to skip military service.
Oh.
That's kind of cool, right? Like,
yeah, that's...
we gotta get Overwatch there in order to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, can you like for all the Overwatch League, all the Korean Overwatch League players, it would be so much fucking on the line for that one tournament. It's just like they would care so much about like, please, like. I don't give a shit about an Overwatch League title. Just let me skip military service. Like I will practice my brains out just to like skip military service. And that's actually an insane incentive. If
you think about it, the Asia Games, you're now only really competing against China for that title. So the real competition is the scrims in order to decide who gets on the South Korean World Cup team. Those would
Can
be
you imagine being the GM or the coach of that team and like players will do anything just to get on that team?
Yeah.
Wow. That's an interesting fact I didn't know about. I want to, for some, not for some reason, but if the world goes their way, if Houston Outlaws wins the Overwatch League title, which is realistic, by the way, as much as we meme on the Houston Outlaws since the inception, if they win the title this year, Violet will have had 3 Overwatch League titles.
And then it's,
And then Profit, and then 2 weeks later, Profit's like, I'm retiring. People be like, okay.
Also, while his former team is crumbling in his absence, right? Like the contrast of how the Shock is performing this season over last season, I think the claim that it is down to Violet leaving is much stronger than Kolush leaving, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. All right. My last take. It's not really a great hot take. We decided 5 each, and I had 4 that I thought were kind of cool, and then this 5th one, I don't know what to do. Rooting for Toronto Defiant is rooting for Overwatch NA esports. Like people are so down on the personality of the league. All these players. Toronto Defiant actually has a good brand. They actually have good personality. Less so now, when they kind of had to break up the boy band. When Sam is out and Speedly is out and OG is out. But still, though, like for all the like they have Kolush and they have these players that like they have a good brand and people enjoy them in the scene. So if you root for the Toronto Defiant, it's actually you're rooting for interest in the Overwatch League scene and like some of those personalities and players like becoming more popular and cultivating engagement and all of this stuff like down the line. They might not be on Jimmy Kimmel or all these talk shows like Super and Sinatra were after the 2019 win, but like you're actually you should root for the Toronto Defiant because rooting for Toronto Defiant is good for the scene.
Okay,
that's what I'll take. Rooting for Toronto Defiant is good for the scene.
Can I modify?
People are so down on them, but
let's see if I can get you there. If what you believe is true, maybe your hot take could be they should not have broken up the team and should have just written out the season for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, I made my tweet when they were disqualified from the knockouts or whatever they're called. Like, I made a tweet that like they got unlucky. Like, I genuinely think the team is good and they got unlucky. And, part of that is just pure cope and me not wanting to say anything bad. But part of that is also that it was generally me being a bit sad because Toronto Defiant, had they been good this year, if they had been top 5, and let's say they're in a map 5 against the Gladiators or Florida Mayhem to qualify for Mrs. Madness, like that would be hype. Like that would be hype as hell. But it was just like a complete face plant. It was just an awful season for Toronto Defiant, and it didn't even make knockouts. And like, what a failure on their part. But like, damn, like it would have been so good for the scene if Toronto Defiant were good. Instead, you have players like freaking Psycho and New York Excelsior quote retweeting just like, "Why do you guys talk so much?" Like that. That just like, fuck, man. That made me so mad when he did that, because like people always harp about the lack of personality, the lack of like good players that are fun to follow and all this stuff. Like that is Toronto Defiant. They just happen to suck, and because they suck, people are less interested. They have less fans rallying around them. There's less interest in the team overall. But if Toronto Defiant were a good team in the league, if they were a top team in the West, like top 3, top 4, so many people would rally around their personalities and who they are, and it would be great for the scene and engagement and all that stuff. And they're actually willing to put themselves out there, like put themselves on the line, do interviews, say fun shit, leak stuff, and like be interesting people. But if you're not good at the game, there's nothing to back up that personality. And so it's really sad, I think, that it didn't end up working out for them, because it would have been so good for the scene. And it would have made everything a lot more interesting.
Yeah. Part of me almost thinks like maybe you could have, like, if they are not meaningfully improving, and I get there are reasons why they absolutely want to improve, but if they don't, that was unfortunately probably the wrong play, because I mean, they could have just rolled a better meta and then be one of the best teams. You make it to playoffs, that's your goal, and then like you maximize the value there, right? But yes, I understand that for various reasons, like this is an unacceptable first half, unfortunately. And I think it didn't need too many augmentations in order to work. I think like if you give them like a Winston, dedicated Winston player, if you give them
Tracer.
A Tracer player, but I mean, honestly, like Hydron could have played Tracer, and then you'd have someone else or whatnot. Like Hydron is probably also still the DPS rotation and how their hero pools function in that team is just an unfortunate game of dominoes where it just doesn't fit together, right? Like the puzzle pieces are not clicking for the metas that we are deploying this year. So like it makes sense. Like they try to hard force speedily into the puzzle piece that everyone else looks like as a flex DPS, which has historically worked well, and it just didn't work. Like he just played catch up too long.
It's people like to clown on them now because they were hyped up going into the season and they underperformed, and that makes it easy to ridicule them. But we should actually embrace the Toronto Defiant, because we should embrace some of their personalities and some of the characters on that team, because it's good for the scene.
Agreed. Okay, so if you did the math, I have a second shock take. It's a hard one.
Okay. You saved the best for last, huh?
And it's not that I have any feeling of like, haha, they deserve this, or they did them. I think there's a lot of system reasons why it will be this way, but I think they are done for this season. It's absolutely donezo.
Oh.
I think, okay, and here's the hot take. They are going to play Atlanta Reign, Gladiators, Justice, and Titans.
Yikes.
Then Valiant, Spitfire, Eternal. I think they will finish 3-5. That means they have to lose. I think no shot they win against Reign and Gladiators. That's a gimme. That's two of the losses. They lose to Justice, 3. They lose to Titans, 4. And then they have to lose 1 against Valiant, Spitfire, or twice Eternal. And I think that's happening.
I disagree. I'm in on the shock. I think they underperformed the first half. They'll hopefully figure it out. It was just absolute, shit season for them. I don't know what was going on with the visas and like their situation and like all that. And they had so much pressure on them. People thought they were going to be a top 2 team in the league, and like they're just like, oh, they're going to run it back. They're going to be amazing. Now, all that pressure is gone. Going into the second half, no one gives a shit about the Shock. Like, no, there's no pressure on them. Like, people aren't talking about them as much. And so there's less pressure on the team. Hopefully, they will have figured out their situation. They can have better practice. I don't know what the roster is going to look like. There's lots of rumors flying around. I don't know what will happen, but I'm in on the Shock. I'm in on the Shock, overperforming in the second half and doing better than people expect. Maybe that's the hot take. We have 2 hot takes about the same topic. I don't know how it works, but I'm in on the Shock for the second half.
Yeah, I think the conservative thing is to say they go 5-3 positive or 4-4. I think they might actually like.
How do they qualify?
Good question.
Yeah.
I mean, you just need top 10, right? And that's probably locked in with a 4-4, 3-4, 5.
I mean, it would be insane if they didn't qualify for some kind of
play-in. Yeah.
Play-in, yeah.
Yeah, I think like Gladiators upgraded, Rain is still crazy good, Justice upgraded, Titans will be interesting, but I think like they lost before against Shock. The thing is like also I'm looking at what I heard was A, available, and B, is likely to happen, and I'm sorry, like there's just it's almost like a little bit like the same issue that Avala is having with talent pool. We are just experiencing the worst rookie year in Overwatch League history, right? Like, if you think about the quality of rookies last year, we had Stalker, we had Proper, these guys. There's just nobody left like this in Tier 2. It just isn't. And then, like, I don't know, like, it's super hard to turn this around. And by the way, I say this because if they do, I personally will consider this like a massive win for management staff like Krusty, Chris. If they actually get like a 6-2 out of this, that would be nuts to me.
So it's very similar. I'm looking at like Wikipedia right now. It's very similar to the mid-season madness qualifiers where top 2 qualify for the playoffs. They're not doing that. Mm-hmm. But then 3rd to 10th in the Western standings all qualify for the play-ins. I'm assuming this is the play-ins. And so if you're a good seed, you get upper bracket, lower bracket if you're a bad seed. So, but they should qualify for the play-ins because at the bottom you'll have Valiant, Vegas, and whether it's London again or I don't know. But they should. They shouldn't be the bottom 3 team in the region.
Yes.
Maybe you're making the point that they will. But like if they you just need the meta to go your way. Like Washington Justice in 2020, Seoul Dynasty in 2020. Like you just need it to go a little bit your way. And if it does, like, come on, they do have the talent to make a run. And so, maybe they'll be mid. I don't think they're going to be as good as people expected them to be at the start of the season. But if the Shock gets like top 5, top 6, like if they're contending for a playoff spot, they could qualify for the playoffs. Like I'm not willing to count them out. I think they'll have a better second half than their first half.
I think like the goal has to be to just like get across the finish line of the qualifying rounds and then hope that this patch is just transformational for your chances, right?
The new support here or whatever.
Might very well be. Yeah. Like if Shock just has a soul year, the Roadhog meta stuff, like where they were not that dissimilar to the situation that they find themselves in.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also like it's not as much a statement against the Shock. I think once again, my hot take is that they threw getting Vindame, but it's also just an expression of the system that we're in and how the pieces fell. Also, honestly, some rule shifting that just massively screwed the entire transfer market, and an absolute lack of quality talent coming through from Tier 2, where we're now experiencing, if you think about the content drought is now being felt because like probably historically low player numbers. We also don't have the academy system. Like that just the funnel of best talent, it's just so much less of a trickle. I think like 2 years from now, we will see like the F2P free-to-play player base people being interested again in playing competitively, ranked numbers massively being inflated in terms of like how many people are playing ranked. The percentages then 2 years down the line, when the 14-year-olds that are currently playing it, or 16-year-olds, turn eligible and get into these pro teams, then is when we are going to see a new influx of talent. But this season, Jesus Christ, it's actually... Who's your Rookie of the Year talent? There's only 2 names that could feasibly be right?
No, just tell me the names.
Sugar Free or Donghak.
Yeah, it's probably going to be Donghak, right?
Yeah, it's just like, there's nobody else. There were only 2 rookies at mid-season. It was Sauna and Donghak. Okay.
Yeah.
And the rest of the rookies just completely missed this year.
Yeah, I mean, people were looking at the Shock, Bliss, and that was about it, right?
Yep.
A few missing names, so...
Yeah, no, the especially discrepancy of like last year with Stalker, with Proper. I'm missing so many in my mind. Like, was it the year of MN3 and yeah, it was, right? MN3. Yeah. MN3 and Zest. Jesus, like
everyone just got promoted at once. Like all the rookies, and you know, I think we were kind of ready for this. I think we kind of knew that like the rookie class this year was going to be worse than it was last year. Like last year, the rookie class was insane. It was the best rookie. Like, it was the best rookie
probably was,
class ever. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why the whiplash is just so crazy this year, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
Oh, well, we'll see how...
Oh, one final thing.
Right?
Quickly. Do you think Shock in the second half would be better if they had Striker on the roster?
Oh, no.
I think yes.
Okay.
I think if they had... Look, as much as like Heesang is a good rookie and all, but like if they just like committed to Striker and Proper as their damage lineup each game, and then Krusty was like, okay, you two cook, and I'll just figure out the support and tank play, and then we're set. Like I can't say that would be worse than Heesang and Proper and their rotations and their flexibility. Like, I'm just confident in that damage duo. I'm just confident in Proper and Striker to the point where I'm like, good, like I can just let them play, and then I'll just have to figure out tank and support stuff for Shock.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think like what they probably would have needed is to Fox Boston Uprising out of Twilight. If that happened,
oh yeah,
that like even honestly like Finn is also not that hot. Like, he probably also had one of the... Was he Roadstar last year? I think he might have been, right? No, he wasn't, I think. Violet... whatever.
Yeah.
That... Like, I think that's the old Shock guy that you want to... You know, the ever returning lost son that you want to bring back. And if that happens, I don't think Heesang is the big problem. I think Sombra is not great for them.
I'm not saying Heesang is the big problem, but I'm saying like people, as much as we meme about Striker, like his experience playing in playoff games and like playing important games and being a super consistent, primarily Tracer player, like his Soldier stint wasn't great last year in Boston, but like he's actually like very reliable. Like I feel confident if I play Striker in my lineup, and Shock needs that. Like they feel unreliable right now. They don't have confidence in their team, and Striker at least shores some of that up. So I think he would only help.
Yeah, I'm not sure what like how that team functions internally. My problem with that would be A, I don't think Striker is an elite Tracer anymore, and B, I think you would feel away if you're Proper and that guy is playing Tracer and you're now on the heroes that have less impact than Tracer and not, you know.
Maybe.
Maybe. But I mean they gotta try something, right? Like this franchise has the burden of trying to win it every year, and they're far away from it right at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm looking forward to uploading this one. It's a long one for sure. We hopefully buried enough. But you know what I'm actually looking forward to? The comment of the one guy that completely devoids our statements of all context, and we get fried for one-liners. Okay, that's what my soul reads right now. 10%
or 10 or 20% of people who witness hot takes, like they they're just like, I told you it was my first take. I told you.
Yes. Yeah.
Just like, this is so dumb. Like, do they genuinely think this? Like, it's just bound to happen. But I think people enjoy some joyful, fun content. We're just having fun, Yiska. And thank you for having me on. It was fun.
It's just public service, right? We're taking it on the chin. Taking it on the chin in order to invoke some emotion for the start of the second half of the season. Appreciate you coming on. I think we had some great hot takes. I think we'll see how these fare out. I think I already can feel the egg on my face. Okay. All right.
Well, that's part of that. That's part of it. You know, it's that's just part of the hot takes experience. I hope people enjoy the content. That's all.
Definitely the same. Thank you for the interview or the hot take panel, and best of luck for the second half of the season.
Thank you.